Hi, I'm Attorney James Betzold and I'm an immigration attorney. I'm going to talk today a little bit about the U visa. The U visa is the visa for those who've been victims of certain crimes. USCIS publishes the list of which crimes are considered sufficient to apply for the U visa. Those include kidnapping, burglary, felonious assault, so an assault that rises to the level of being a felony. Usually that includes a weapon or extreme pain or hurt of some sort. Domestic violence, rape, sexual abuse, criminal sexual contact, those sorts of crimes are all the ones that are considered severe enough to merit the granting of a U visa. Now, a couple requirements for obtaining the U visa. First of all, that you've been the victim of the crime. It needs to be for real. You can't just say you did it. You actually have to report the crime to the police and participate with the police with all of their reasonable requests for information or participation in putting the criminal in jail. So, if, for example, you were the victim of domestic violence, you called 911, the police came, that's a potential case. Now, if when the police got there you said, oh, I don't want anything to happen to him, I really love him, it's my fault. Listen, that's what victims of abuse say. It's typical and it's unfortunate, but if you don't participate and help the law enforcement do their job, you may not qualify for the visa. Now, helping law enforcement with any reasonable assist for request for assistance is a requirement. And you also need to suffer the requisite amount of hardship. So it can't just be, oh, they pushed me and that hurt me. No, it has to be something that affects you, either a severe injury or it could be a severe emotional trauma that it's left you with. And there's ways of documenting all of those things. Now, the first step in applying for the U visa is obtaining the law enforcement certification. Now, there's only certain agencies that can assign a law enforcement certification, such as the police department that investigated the crime, the prosecutor's office that prosecuted the crime, or the judge in the case can actually issue a U visa certification as well. However, if the case never got to court, if there was never an arraignment or formal charges, then there's no use asking the judge for certification. Wouldn't apply. Now, you may ask, well, I'm an immigrant, I'm here without papers, I've worked without papers, maybe I falsely claimed to be a U.S. citizen, maybe I have the 10-year permanent bar, which I talk about in a different video. What can I do then? Well, the good news is that with the U visa, there's a very broad and generally available waiver. It can waive most things. It can waive even what we term an aggravated felony, which is a felony. It's a bad felony that usually would prevent you from ever getting a visa. It can forgive the 10-year bar. It can forgive the 10-year permanent bar. So there's a lot of options out there. Now, if you're a terrorist, a Nazi, or if you've recruited child soldiers, maybe that wouldn't cover you, in which case I don't want you to get a visa anyway. So moving along. In the process, you obtain that law enforcement certification. It'll be valid for 6 months. So in that period of 6 months, you need to file your application with USCIS, the actual visa application to the government and the federal USCIS. They're the ones who decide the petition. Now, there's a backlog on these visas right now. Only 10,000 are able to be given out each year, and there's a few years anyway of backlog on that, but you should still file it because as soon as they do what's called a prima facie determination, right? So they're going to look at the case and say, all right, is there enough here to make the case, and it could be a good case maybe? If they look at it superficially and say yes, you can actually get what's called deferred action status, and along with that comes a work permit. So it's definitely worth applying for, even if it's going to take a few years for that visa to get approved. Now, once the visa is approved, you'll get your visa. It's good for 4 years. After 3 years, you're able to apply for legal permanent residence in the United States. That's your green card, your residency status. After you're a resident for 5 years, you can obtain your citizenship. So it is a path that will eventually, or could eventually, lead to citizenship for you. Now, a lot of people ask, well, what about my husband? I was the victim of the crime, he wasn't, but he doesn't have papers either. As long as you're married on the day that you file the application with USCIS, you can include your spouse. Okay? Your spouse can be included. If he needs a waiver, you can file a waiver. And that's what we call a derivative on this petition. If you have minor children, they can also be included. And it has to be minor children on the day that you file the application with USCIS. If you have, well, if your child is the victim of a crime and you're the parent, you can qualify, even if your child's not an immigrant. If they're born here, they're the victim, you're actually considered a derivative or an indirect victim of that crime that occurred. So, you know, there's a lot of options for family members to be able to take advantage of this visa as well. So, if you think this might apply to you, please get in contact with us. We'd love to talk to you about it. And even though it's difficult to talk about the subjects of sexual abuse or domestic violence, it's important that you open up. And it's important that if you're the victim of these crimes that you report it to the police. You do have the right to be protected against crimes here in the United States, even if you don't have status yourself. Consult with an attorney. I'm Attorney James Betzold. Thank you.